Hi everyone, welcome to the New England Racing Show, Manchester, New Hampshire, Channel 23. We're also on YouTube and Facebook, and like us and you'll get the show every week. Well, this past week, we went up to Seekonk Speedway to practice on Saturday, and that's when you know spring's coming, when you're at the Speedway and it's 50 degrees and you're out there with your car, and we finally shook winter off. So this coming weekend, we're going to be at Waterford Speed Bowl racing the Midget, and we'll have some highlights for you next week. But I wanted to show you an interview that took place a few weeks ago at Bobby Seymour's Midget race car shop. There was three people.
Edition of the New England Racing Show.
Bobby
Tonight,
Seymour,
brings us to Marlborough,
Steve Grant in the middle, and
we're in
Irish
the
Saunders
fabrication
from Hoosier
department
Tire.
of Seymour Enterprises. Alongside me on the left is Bobby Seymour. Alongside me on the right, who wears many hats with Hoosier Tire, Irish Saunders. He's up here tonight, and we're going to talk shop about racing tires and racing midget parts. First, we'll talk to Bobby. And Bobby, we are at the home of a former USAC champion, famous number 29, Boston Louie. Your dad, who brought open wheel to the forefront all over the country by traveling a million miles with your mom. And I'd like to know and Bobby is a former NEMA champion and a midget champion and traveled all over the country in between. His brother was a midget driver also. And what I want to talk about is how you ended up getting into the parts of midgets, because it doesn't seem like asphalt midgets have a catalog that you could just order midget parts. I mean, it's a specialized division. So how did you get into the parts department in midget racing?
Well, I'm glad you asked. It all started with Hoosier Tires back in 1982 when we hooked up with Irish and convinced them that there was enough of a market out there for midget asphalt tires. And so we probably started by selling about 2 or 3 tires a week, I think, Irish. But at that point, we were going up against the great Marvin Rifkin and M&H Tire. So it was very difficult to break in. Marvin was a pretty smart guy and a good friend of ours. But we got it going pretty well into the mid-'80s and stuff. And then I think when we really started with the parts, it was when John Bickford, Jeff Gordon's stepdad, was the owner of MPD Racing, and they started making all the sprint car aluminum parts for all the sprint cars, the driveline components. And it took a while to convince John that there was enough of a market for midget racing, especially asphalt midget racing. And that's where we started selling MPD, hubs and spindles, and Hoosier tires, and it kind of grew from there.
So how long have you been doing this part of the business, Bobby?
Well, yeah, that was part-time. That was part-time back in the mid-'80s. I think when I really got serious was when I got married in 1992. I figured I had to have a real job, and we really started working hard at getting it going better and getting the business going. So we started in 1992 and started getting into everything, and safety equipment, helmets, gloves, shoes, fire suits. There was a big void in this area. Nobody really did that. And so that was my way of making a living at the time, and 22 years later, we're still doing it.
Well, I can tell racing season's coming pretty close, because this garage is full of midgets. Many times I stop up here, I see super modifieds in here and the Silver Crown way back when. And do you still do, I know you specialize in midgets, but fire suits are for everybody, helmets are for everybody. Do you still do racing parts for other divisions?
Oh, sure. The super modified group a little bit. There's probably a handful of guys that buy from us there. A little bit in the modifieds. Anthony Nocella, my midget driver, also has a modified. So we don't really stock the modified stuff, but when someone needs a part that we feel we can get for them and get it at a decent price at a reasonable time frame, we sell just about anything. But really the crossover for us is the safety equipment. Everybody that races, whether you're a drag racer, SCCA racer, so we're reaching out to all those guys, and again, we're really the only one in this area, probably a 200-mile radius, that sells the safety equipment, keeps it in stock. So we have the drag racer coming in. The SCCA is a big group that we have been working with for a long time, as well as all the midget guys and super guys and modified guys.
Well, if you're ever in the pits when the NEMA or NEMA Light midgets are going on, you can see Bobby. He's got his 2 cars. He supports the NEMA Light division, but you can see how he is many times at different pit areas putting his expertise of the handling or talking about tires. And we're going to just move right over to Irish Saunders here, who's got about 35 years Irish in the Hoosier industry.
Yeah, I think something like that. I just after 25, you just lose count. So I think it's something like that, 35 years.
So you have many hats at Hoosier. One of them is dealing with the different divisions and the contracts 1 year, 2 year, 5 years down the road. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I do a lot of that stuff. Basically, do a lot of manufacturer help engineers. We do a lot of engineering help with that, keeping the product good for everybody, that for repeatability, for longevity, and giving the customer what they want. So a lot of it involved in that. Just wear a lot of hats, like you said, down there at Hoosier.
Well, I've been involved in racing 50 years, and I've only known Hoosier Tire. As kids, we didn't even know what Hoosier Tire was, but it was a cool logo, it was purple, and we were wearing it. But I'm interested in the contract part, and I don't want to dwell on it too long, but there's chemicals and compounds that are involved in making a racing tire. So how do you project, because of being in the stock market where it fluctuates so much? You must be sweating your thinking about, you got a 5-year contract right now and the prices are jumping. And when you go out, you really have to do your homework to do a 2, 3, or 5 year contract, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny, Steve. I mean, you're one of the first ones that's really asked that question. But yeah, I mean, there's things that we have to look at with the product. Number one, we have to do a lot of forecasting and look out past, if it's a 3-year program or a 5-year or whatever the program might be, on how much raw material we have to get and be able to buy it at a good price to help keep the cost of racing down. We work with that every single day. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that we have to look into to project tires each year. Like the tires that you're going to run probably in April are probably going to be built in January. Used to be that Hoosier, you could turn that ship pretty quick, but it's become an awful big ship. We're actually proud to say that we're the largest manufacturer of just race tires in the world. So that's all we build is just race tires, no street tires, just all racing tires. I think we have almost over 2,000 tires now that we make. For different types of tires for different applications, whether it be quarter midgets, midgets, TQs, the Rolex cars, the Continental tires are actually produced by Hoosier. So there's a lot of things that we're involved in.
I noticed the modified series is, and I'm going to stay away from NEMA because Bobby Seymour and myself are involved in NEMA. So I'm talking Hoosier Tire with a modified, with a weight and a super modified. It seems like, especially the long distance races, these tires are holding up pretty well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's got to the point now where, the excitement of modified racing used to be back in the day when, and I'll probably use that word back in the day quite a bit here in this tonight's program. So, but anyhow, that you would find that back in the day you'd have the guy that would bolt on 4 sticker tires and he'd carve up through the pack and win the race. We've built the tires now that if it's a 150 lap race, the tires only fall off maybe a couple tenths. So the advantage of coming in and putting 4 tires on and cutting back up through the field, you're only picking up a couple tenths, and that's really not enough anymore to get up through the pack. So a lot of guys are going the whole distance on a set of tires. So we've worked very, very hard at making the tires so they have the longevity, and they seem like they will hold up, for that long race to help cut the cost of racing. We look at a lot of the cost, and that's part of the thing that we're looking at all the time. I mean, today with midget tires, we're selling midget tires cheaper today than what we were 12 years ago. And that's only because of the fact that with the contracts that we have and doing the long-term projection, we're able to buy those materials ahead of time so we can get good prices on those, so we can do that kind of thing.
Well, Irish, I'm in the insurance industry. That's why I'm very curious about the curing. Bobby can't come to you in June and say, oh, by the way, Irish, I need 150 tires for mid-July, can he?
Well, he can do that, but he won't get them.
That's exactly right. Is there a cure time for Our tire. I'm learning here as I'm talking to you. So is there a cure time?
There is some cure time with tires. I mean, obviously, the longer that you leave a tire set, it is going to cure and harden up some. But we try to keep that shelf life rotated. We just like bread in the grocery store. You know, you take the new bread and you put it towards the back, and you take the old bread and you push it forward. And that's kind of what we do at our warehouse. When we're shipping tires out, is usually the older stuff gets shipped out first, and the newer stuff's to the back. But it's not, when I say old, it's not really old tires. It might be a tire that maybe 4 months old or whatever it might be.
So so we have different companies that have tires, and service is a big part of nowadays. I mean, everybody's price sensitive, I'm sure, but the service and the quality comes first, and then we'll go with price sensitive, because everybody's within, I'm sure, a few dollars, because tires are tires. But 35 years, Bobby's been selling them almost that long with you. This tire is really involved into in New England anyway. We'll go with short track racing, because I see it in almost every division, from quarter midgets to super modifieds and everybody in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bob Newton, when he built the company, he built it on service. That was number one thing, to where that these racers, they show up, and you know, it's to the point where here we are in the race shop, and these guys spend a lot of hours and a lot of time on these race cars getting them ready to go. And the one thing that guys really get spun out about, we might say, is that when you show up at the racetrack and you can't get the tire that you need. So service is number one. And I know that the Seymours, I mean, we've been involved with them for years and years, and they've been very good friends of Hoosier, and they've worked very, very hard. It wasn't just given to them. Like he said, you know, Marvin was a great competitor to race against. And man, when you got a product that was good enough to beat Marvin, you knew you had something then, you know. I had a lot of respect for that guy, and I always will. But I mean, the service, having the right tires, the right price, the right time for the competitors, that's it. And I mean, I'm sure Bobby gets calls, you know, 9 o'clock at night. Hey, I just got off work. I need a tire. Have you got one? Yep, come on over and I'll make sure I got it for you. Or I'll see you at the track. I'll bring it for you, and I'll have your name on it. You know, so yeah, service is very, very important with it. I mean, other than, you know, and knowing that person, Steve, that each week in and week out, you know he's going to be there and he's going to treat you right. Where sometimes, you know, change is always dangerous, they say. So whenever you do make a change with something, whether it be the product itself, what it will do in the long run, we see, is it costs a lot of competitors a lot of money, because now it's like, okay, I have a different type of tire. Now I got to go tire test. Now I got to test my car. I got to find out what shock package I got to get. Now I got to buy different shocks because it's going to perform different. So being consistent in the product that you have, and each, you know, year in and year out, that means a lot to saving the cost of racing for competitors.
Well, I can imagine change is tough in every sport, and thinking about making changes in the modifieds, if they're going to make a change, and if we're blistering a tire and they go up to the tire company and say, why are we blistering? Well, we don't know, because we don't have a track record of how long what we're doing with this tire yet. So you kind of need a base to figure out what's going on with tires. What I want to learn about today, and maybe somebody else, I hear gumballs, I hear 6 this, 7 this. What is that all about?
Well, I mean, gumballs, I mean, the gumball days, I think, are over. Used to be we could fire tires on, and I mean, they'd go 20 laps, 30 laps on a modified, and they'd be done, you know. Now we're building the tires that'll go 150 laps or 125 laps for a tour race. But with the midgets, could we go a lot faster and a lot softer? Oh yeah, there's a lot of technology there we could do. But that technology, as everybody knows, costs money. Whether it be in tires, whether it be in shocks, whether it be in motors, there's just a lot of technology costs money. We look at cup racing. The technology there is almost like F1. I mean, they're to the point where they're taking data that they'll get at the track today, and they're sending it, they're emailing it or sending it over to a center in Charlotte that they already have the program. And they'll send back, say, okay, well, now here's the shocks you got to do. So you're not even making changes. The guys at the track making the changes, they're back in the R&D center making those changes and sending that back to the guys. So technology does cost a lot of money. That's why, you know, we try again to keep everything very consistent and not change. But if they do have an issue with a tire that they want something different, we can change that for them. We will, you know, make the changes for them what they need.
Speaking of cup racing, I see sometimes, and the average fan that's watching cup racing can see, that sometimes the tire company misses the setup for a track. And that's a chemical makeup, and they're guessing. And like like we're getting ready to start, and I can't even picture in 2 weeks we're going to get ready to start at Waterford Speed Bowl. Are we going to use a softer tire there as opposed to in July when it's 96 degrees at a Star Speedway or Oswego Speedway? Are we using a harder or softer? Is that a question? Maybe I'll pass that over to Barbie.
Well, we're not, and there's reason for that. It costs money to do that, and fortunately, the tire we use right now is the MG7 compound, and the best thing about that thing is it's been good on the big super speedways, say at Oswego or Stafford or Thompson, and it holds up at those racetracks at 90 degrees out. And then we go to Star Speedway or Waterford Speed Bowl, and on a cool night, it's still getting these cars around in record time. So it's a good compound that we developed through the years working with Irish that came up with this, and it really saves the racer having to. And at the back 15, 20 years ago, there was the MG5, the MG6, and the MG7, the MG7 III. We had all these different tires. One guy would go out with the 7, and the next guy put the 6 on and beat him. After a while, it got to a point where it just wasn't cost effective. So we started developing one tire that was going to be not the best at each track, but would hold up good enough so that, we just made progress that way, and it was a big deal when we developed this tire.
Well, we're going to go to a meeting later on tonight with Irish, and he's going to explain maybe how the tire reacts to certain a loose car as opposed to a tight car, because sometimes in Victory Lane, Irish, I'll see the first 2 guys, them tires are perfect. And the guy in third said, I ran out of tire, but watching him from the flag stand, you see that he's sideways through the turns, digging. So maybe with your expertise tonight, we can talk about why certain things happen, because usually it would be a rookie driver making a good run, but a midget is different to drive than a stock car, and I think it shows up a little bit more.
Well, just remember one thing, Steve. Tires is the easiest thing to blame on why you lost a race. I just want you to know that. Because, I mean, it could never be the driver, right?
Never.
And
never.
It could never be the car.
No.
So it's got to be the tires. So that we take that a lot, But you're right. There's guys that they're out there, and the first top 2 guys, their tires look absolutely perfect. And you got that third place guy, but you see him, he's hazing the right rear all the way around the racetrack, and you're like, I don't care if we had a MG10 on, that tire was still going to probably, he's still going to abuse the thing, And you know what? That puts some randomness back into the racing. When you do have a tire that's really hard, doesn't fall off, you get that follow the leader. And Randy Sweet, a good friend of mine that does a lot of the steering for a lot of the cup cars and a lot of different racing, he always said this, and I'll never forget it. He says parades start at 9 o'clock in the morning, not 9 o'clock at night. So you want to see some good racing. You want to see passing. We were sitting there talking earlier about why does a person sit at a slot machine?
Exactly.
Because there's an unknown. Now you got cars that all run the same speed. You're going to know that pretty much the way they start is the way they're going to finish. So being able to have that guy that can start in the back and go to the front, that's an unknown. People like seeing unknown things. No different than if you go to a Eve of Destruction. They don't know how bad that car is going to get tore up. Mm-hmm. Monster trucks, you never know what's going to happen with a monster truck. He's going to crash or what's going to happen. So, and right now, and I don't know if maybe I'm getting old, I'm getting ADD or whatever. I mean, but I can't. I love watching midgets, but if it gets over 25 laps, I'm just about. I can't. I just can't. I lose interest in it, And I think a lot of the younger generation. You watch sometimes when you're at a racetrack, Steve, and you're up on the flag stand, and I think I told you this, just turn around sometime on a yellow flag, when you're throwing a yellow flag, turn around and look at them. And I guarantee most of the people, they've got their phone out and they're twittering or they're texting about what happened on the track, or they're wanting to know where we're going to meet after the races are over, or whatever it might be. So we have to we're in the entertainment business, and Hoosiers is more than just a race tire company. Our goal is to work with people like the Seymours and with NEMA and with all the sanctioning bodies into keeping the fun back in it. Because I don't know of any. Do you guys got any midget drivers that do it for a living?
No, sir.
There's no. Okay.
I do it for a living.
You do it for a living.
I get $100 a week.
Well, you do great. You do great. So the the drivers, they do it because it's a hobby. I mean, this is their golf game, and this is supposed to be fun. And I think the best thing you can do is send the message to everybody is that we have to have fun doing this. Because when the fun goes away, then they're going to quit doing it and they're going to go do something else. So, it's not fun to go there and tear tires up. It's not fun to go there with a hard tire, and the guy says, "Geez, my tires are hard. Now I got to do something that's totally legal. I'm going to start soaking the tire because it's too hard." So then you have it's just a nightmare, So you got to make sure that tire's not too hard, but not too soft either. So it's a fine line that you have to make there to put on a good show.
Well, that's what I'm amazed at with the NEMA cars is, again, I've never driven one, but I've watched a lot of laps in racing, and it seems like with the NEMA car, the full midget as they call it, 350, 400 horse, seems like the edge is about a half an inch, and they're all right there. And when you're that right there, 25 laps is a lot because they get away from you. Where the NEMA lights, on the other hand, it seems like their edge is pretty wide, and that proves for 2 and 3 wide racing and photo finishes at the end, and we've had a bunch of them last year. And the kids, most of them get it, and I see guys that ran 8th and 9th get out of the car and hug each other. They had a great race because they were side by side for the 25 laps. And to me, sometimes it seems like there's in NEMA there's 3 races going on: the big dollar guys, the medium, and the back guys. So I see 3 as a starter. I see 3 different races going on, but that horsepower that these guys project, it must be hard. I mean, to try to keep a tire on and to work with you guys with so much horsepower.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's just such a wide variety, Steve, of different types of cars and horsepower combinations that are out there. I think you hit on it too. A guy that I think everybody that's, if they're a race fan in the Northeast, knows is Bentley Warren. Bentley, a good friend of mine and the Seymours.
All of New England.
Well, yeah, I mean, who has more fun than Bentley? I mean, nobody does. So, but it's a case where, when we ended up, building tires, and he was one of the main guys that helped with our super modified development. And the thing he always said is that when the cars are going so fast, how much harder it is to pass when you're going that fast. So there's a lot of truth into that. I just 2 weeks ago I was in Phoenix for the NASCAR Mexico Series, and these are 2,700-pound late models that are only 450 horsepower. Okay, so and the race was a great race. They were running 3 wide at Phoenix. The winner won the thing on the last lap going through the dog leg, and it was a great race to watch. But they were under horsepowered cars, or I shouldn't say under horse, but they were lower horsepower cars, and they could run side by side. I mean, they didn't have to worry about having so much horsepower. And it was really, really a good race. So I think what you're saying is very true if you look at that. Racetracks, smaller tracks seem to promote better racing. I'd hate to take, we talked about the old Copper World days when I know Seymour's have won, Silver Crown races with Schrader out there. We were just reliving some of them races just earlier this afternoon, and
what a piece of history of what a piece of history of like the 80s and the early 90s, the 70s. My dad was in the 60s. That was a golden era of racing, and maybe we're showing our age because before that it was the golden era of racing. But I think that we had names in racing, and everybody knows Irish when he walks in, and you got Bugsy Stevens. We had characters back then, and characters, full-fledged characters. I mean, there were so many different personalities back then where not so much now. Racing has really changed, and I think all tracks are trying to find out what makes these people tick. Because we'll go to Waterford some nights, and I walk out there for heats, and I see 200 people in the stands, and I'm like, oh boy, this is bad. He's got 7 divisions going. And you're thinking, this is going to be real bad for him. And Terry Ames is a great friend of NEMA, and you're feeling bad for him. And then you go out for the feature, and it's full. Because people don't have time, or they don't care about racing as much as the people in the pits do. And we have to find the happy medium of, God forbid if we ever time trialed. I mean, we'd do it once, and that would be about it. Them days are over. I mean, we're almost at the point now, because of how fast things are going, I think, that doing the European qualifying or whatever and just go out there and get some times and set up for a feature. Is that how it is? I mean, you're at every track all over the place following the Hoosier Tires and doing the service like you're talking about. I mean, you're in deep. I'm not sure if you have time to watch racing, talking to all the teams out there.
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right, Steve. I mean, there is, everybody has got a lot of things on their plate that they have to do now in their life. And, going to a racetrack, people want to go there and they want to see races. I always said that, time trials, if I wanted to see speed, I'd go to a drag strip, Watching a good heat race, and the way the outcome of that heat races dictates the way the cars are going to start in the feature. I think that's pretty awesome to watch that, because they will race hard through that heat race. But looking back at everything, I've been very fortunate being at Hoosier for so long. I mean, all the tire development that we've done is, I've had all these Cup guys have crossed my path at one time or another. Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, Casey Kane, Ryan Newman. All these guys have at one point in time done some kind of a tire test for me or whatever. It's really neat to know that these guys, and most all those guys, they don't forget where they come from. There's a few of them that have. But.
I want to stop you right there, because oftentimes I hear Tony Stewart still talk about Irish. So your friendship is, sometimes people get caught up in who they are, but behind the scenes, Irish, you're friends with a lot of the Cup drivers that have come up through the ranks of Midgets in Silver Crown and remain friends all these years.
Yeah, I mean, Tony and I are really good friends. He sponsored my son for about the last, that was 13 years. My son raced professional motocross, and he was paralyzed 3 years ago in a motocross accident. But I got to tell you, the racing industry is a big industry, but the racing family is a very, very small family. When this happened, you really find out who your real friends are, and there was friends that I didn't even know I had that were involved in it. And we're lucky enough that this past year, Tony got involved with building Eric a 600 mini sprint, and he's now racing it with hand controls. And he did very well. He finished fourth in the USAC points his first year out in those, and
had a shot at winning one night.
Had a shot at winning. He was real close at winning the other night, and now he wants more horsepower. So we just got to get him more horsepower now. So it's back to that cost thing.
Well, that's a good thing that your son now. He's an inspirational story. I'm sure it broke your heart to see all this going, but to watch your son to not quit on you and probably pull you through it, saying, "Dad, don't worry about it, because we can do this," is an amazing story. And I wish we had an hour show to touch on this. We got 2 minutes left on this story, and I just want to bring up the Boston Louis. The Boston Louis is coming in. We get the NEMA lights, and we're going to do in the NEMA full meet. We're going to do 29 laps in honor of Boston Louis. Bobby, you want to talk a little bit about the Boston Louis, as we got just a minute left?
All right, now take over. Boston Louis is coming up on July 23rd. It's a Wednesday night in conjunction with the Seekonk Big Modified race. So it's going to be a barn burner. The place is going to be packed. And I'll tell you, there's going to be a lot of midgets there. I think we're going to be looking at probably 40-plus midgets. Irish is going to get some guys from the Midwest to come out and compete. So I know this is the end of the show here. Irish, I want to thank you for coming. Steve, thank you. I know you're the host, but this is my place. And I will give it. But thank you all for doing this. And Bill, thanks for having us.
I mean, keep up with all the events coming up with the NEMA series on NEMAracing.com. We will be selling lap money for $29 a lap. Both divisions, NEMA lights, and again, Irish, thank you. There's so many stories that we could do with Irish, and I'm not sure we could do them all on TV, but a great personality in racing with a lot of history and a lot of knowledge of the tire. This is his work. He's up here in New England today. It's 14 degrees outside, and we're racing in 2 weeks, and I can't believe it. But he's up here. We're going over to a big meeting, and tomorrow night you're going to be at Stafford. To talk to the modified drivers about same thing that we're dealing with and trying to make everything better. It's been a family for 22 years with Bobby and Irish and Hoosier Tires with NEMA, and hopefully we can make it another 20. I'm not going to be around for 22 years. Bobby, let's hope. Irish will be around 22 years, and again, go with Hoosier Tire and Irish Saunders. And Irish's phone is open for anybody. If you have a question about Hoosier Tires, he will pick up the phone and try to answer the questions for you. Again, for New England Racing Show and Bill Sturgis, thanks for having us. We're in Marlboro, Mass. at Seymour Enterprises. Thank you.
I hope you liked the interview, and finally spring's here, so we're going to be at Waterford this weekend. I think the weather looks good, and we're going to have some actual racing highlights for you next week. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.